Hello, everyone. Yes, you heard correctly. The name of the company is Autopsy, and it's not a Halloween joke. Yeah, why failure, right? So I became first interested in learning about business failure when I closed my first company down in 2015. My first startup was based around creating an ethical menswear e-commerce company, which actually was deriving from the fact that we were infuriated by seeing this collapse of this factory in Dhaka, Bangladesh, called Rana Plaza, which you might have heard of back in 2012. It was manufacturing for the likes of H&M, United Colors of Benetton, and Gap, which provided no compensation whatsoever for the workers. So I hope there are no H&M, United Colors of Benetton, and Gap people in here. What we wanted to do was basically create like a more of a kind of sustainable brand, showing transparency in our supply chain and so on. And so we had a design team in London. We were selling to stockists in the UK and predominantly internationally. And then we had our, machinists and so on in our factory in Dhaka, Bangladesh. So 4 years of, really hard work, grind, enthusiasm, we're going to change the world, and ended in failure. So this is me and my then co-founder in our factory then. And so post the company failure, which is about, 2015, 2016, I was getting really alarmed by the lack of retrospect in the tech industry and how we weren't taking enough lessons from failure, how there are so many highlights on successful companies, but no one seems to want to really talk about the failures too often. So you read about these stats like 90% of startups fail, or this very famous startup genome stat, which is within 3 years, 92% of startups fail. And so where did these guys, where do they go? What happens to them? What happens to all that information? So I started to collect stories online on Medium posts and just simply putting up on an X theme WordPress template. And to my alarm, I actually remembered this because I was in Berlin and I basically went for a pint with a mate, and all of a sudden looking at my emails, and the thing just went viral. It was really weird. Like, we had over 100,000 page views in the first 4 days. And we had people like Bloomberg, The Next Web, Product Hunt, and Hacker News just really like upvoting our stuff, upvoting their website, and wanting to feature us in their publication. Funnily enough, we got a quote, we got a tweet by Mark Andreessen as well, saying that, this is a good idea, because essentially you can look at companies that have failed and redo them again in a successful manner. So just to go back on what I would call our vanity metrics, today we have about 2,000 company failure submissions, over 12,000 email subscribers, and so on. So what I would say is that today we're basically a data and research company, and we're looking at information around historical data, which is basically failed company data, distressed company data, basically being about zombies, and founder profile data as well, to basically derive insights for venture capitalists and startups. How we go about actually doing this is creating customized reports currently for these clients, and then we're looking at basically automating parts of our aspects in our products. Sorry, dry mouth. Just 1 second. Awkward, talk amongst yourselves. So why are we doing this? So we believe that there are many companies that focus on success, on analyzing success. What that then pretty much does is that it affects the resultant findings. And so we believe that it's also very, very important to also look at failure. So for example, here, this is like a summarized example of key data points we can collect. So this is a fintech company called Couplux, which you might have heard of, which basically they were trying to do the mint.com of the US and the UK. What was one of their issues, one of the core issues that they had, was that actually the design of their products didn't seem too trustworthy. People would go onto the platform not wanting to sign up. They didn't want to give their financial information. The other things were like the other typical things that you might hear about, oh, not enough follow-up funding and so on. But essentially what we want to do here is show you that, show the client that basically if you have a look at the different tags and issues of certain companies within certain sectors, you should be learning from these causations to try to avoid future ones. Before I go quickly into some of the findings that you might find helpful in like your product practices, this is essentially how we get some of the data. So about, I would say, 50% is automated through like data scrapers and algorithms, and we use trustworthy data sources for more quantitative data like financial data and administration reports on things like Open Corporates and Companies House. We then have 30% of it predominantly coming from website submissions, and then another 20% or so is like from partner VCs and accelerators and so on that are constantly giving us this information. So this one here is just a really quick analysis piece we did with a company called Forward Partners, which is an early stage venture capital firm in London. And they basically wanted us to look at what are the causations, what are the top 10 causations. I like it, take photos, yes. And apparently you guys like graphs, so here you go. Top 10 causations of failure on a sample set of 300 companies, going from pre-seed to about Series B. And interesting enough, the things that came up the most, which is not the right team. And not the right team was things around team mismanagement, poor leadership, CTO blaming the CEO, that kind of thing you might have heard of. Poor talent acquisition, poor people and hiring strategies. Non-technical founders sometimes often have the issues of not knowing who do I go and hire and what exactly are the techie people that I need. Second thing is like wrong business model, unsustainable business models, going after the wrong target market, poor pricing strategies and so on. And then the third you see here, I won't go through all of them, but the third you see here is like product is not really a hit. So product wasn't in at the right market at the right time, essentially sometimes can happen. For example, I would say for my ethical menswear company, if I maybe were to do it now, maybe it could have been a bit more of a success, because back then, trying to educate people about sustainable consumerism was actually quite difficult than to maybe how it is now. So these here are, so essentially what we try to do with every kind of case study we get through, you can understand it's quite a manual process, but essentially what we have to do is tag these companies with factors. So these factors are essentially divided up into strategic factors, which are here, and operational factors. So strategic factors are things around, product issues, there's things around market issues, things around, what else have we got? Lack of focus, business model, superior competition. And then you have operational factors, which are more to do with like team issues, resources, pricing, and also legal issues as well. So essentially what we have to do is take all these various factors and tag each company with 13 to 14 different types of variances, which essentially helps our analysis thereafter of these companies. What we tend to do, which will make sense when I talk about the practice in a second, is that under every single one of these factors you see here, we have to determine about 1 to 3 different kind of like subcategories as to what are the most common causes of issues under product, what are the most common causes of issues under, pricing misfit, and then give these categories and measurements. So essentially, what you can potentially do with something like this, which might be quite relevant to you as product people, is that there are 2 common practices that you might want to take away. So this is just a screenshot from one of our clients' websites called Board of Innovation. Board of Innovation is an innovation agency that works with like Fortune 500 companies, and they basically are constantly looking at ways of using unique data sets to do interesting stuff with their clients. So for example here, what they did was that they came to us and said, hey, we have a lot of healthcare companies that are our clients, and so we want to do like rapid validation on their product ideas or tech tool ideas through your company's data set. So essentially, has this been done before? What has worked out? What hasn't worked out? And so that was really essential in their product discovery and product sprints, which is something that you could take away. The second thing I would recommend is taking those factors, and I think we can share these slides with those of you who are interested afterwards, but essentially taking those factors and utilizing those factors in like your product teams. So what you could do is take those factors that you think are really valuable to you or that you might be feeling like you're experiencing a challenge, and so categorize them and obviously give them 1 to 3 statements and then rank them between 1 to 5 of issues that you might have and do that on a bi-monthly basis. So how that kind of works in practice is we do this for the clients that we do internally, is that we basically take those causations, give them back an executive summary, and say these are the kind of pitfalls that you should be looking to avoid in existing exercises or in the long term. So there is another model that you can try to use with this, is that if you do have a data analyst or data scientist person in your team, is that take those measurements and take those findings and get them to run logistic regression on them or statistic modeling to see if they can pick up any correlations or patterns, and then essentially that could act as your like a health check for your that practice within your company. Just one thing before I shoot off is that there's 2 books that I really recommend if you're interested in this topic. One is a book called The Entrepreneurial Myth, which is by a person called Louise Nicholson. And it's really interesting because it looks like, should we be celebrating failure like the way the Silicon Valley people do? Looking at the behavioral sciences between why people make the mistakes that they do. And it's just a really interesting topic because it makes you think kind of broadly instead of just like, I guess, immediate factors such as like product issues. Second book is Black Box Thinking. Black Box Thinking actually comes from the learnings from the aviation industry. So the aviation industry is very well known for being one of the leading industries of standardizing common practices. And what I mean by that is issues that they have had. So for example, with the aviation industry, if you make a mistake, people die, right? Like that's just really messed up. So they're really known for learning from things from a retrospective perspective and acting on it really thoroughly. And I think that's something that we can probably start practicing a lot more in our businesses. I did go through that very fast, I've just realized. But yeah, I'm open up to your questions, and please follow us if you like what I talked about.